Hello, welcome again to this episode. And this is our last episode in this section of trying graphic designing. So, in the previous lessons, we saw how to use Adobe Illustrator and how to use Adobe Photoshop, partially, of course. So, the thing is, after going through these two software, it happened to be like they all have the same features and they all could accomplish the same things. So, I wanted to answer the question, what is the difference between Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator? It is important for us to know the difference because, one, as professionals, it is important for you to make your choice deliberately. So your choice should always be deliberate. Why do you choose this and that in front of your customer? And secondly, I believe knowing what each one is and what each one can accomplish is also understanding the field. It's also mastering the field. So, for example, when this software works on this type of media, and so on and so forth, it automatically means that you also know what those media is. So you understand the actual concept these software are trying to tackle. So that's another reason why it is important for us to know the difference between these software. So without hesitating, let's go ahead and explore some of these points I have found that makes the difference between these two software. So the first one to me is the maintenance. When you look at the Adobe Master Collection, the whole collection is a set of software. And at some point, when you look at them together, you go through each one of them, you can see that some of them have similarities, not only Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. So you always see these kind of similarities in between them. But one thing is sure, it seems Adobe is only trying to solve a problem for multimedia, for media, and digital productions. So when you look at this whole field, it comes with so many things. It comes with so many possibilities. It would be impossible for them to incorporate all these possibilities into a one software. An example would be, if I may, Adobe Premiere Pro. So when you take Adobe Premiere Pro, the software is so crowded, so many things at the same time that it could be divided into some small software. But Adobe already has so many software in their pack. It will be an overload again to try to divide such software into smaller software. So that's my concern with the maintenance. So in order to maintain this whole work, it is good to separate functions. So they just decide to separate the functions and make a difference of a specific function. But it happened to be that with the case of Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, they look too close. But still, trust me, there's a huge difference. So the other thing I would like to mention is maybe something many people are not aware of is the macromedia event. The macromedia event, what I mean by that is, I remember when I started using designing software, it would be somewhere around 2003, 2004 and so on. And I didn't start with Adobe Photoshop. I didn't start with any Adobe product. Then I knew there was Photoshop. I think that was around Photoshop 7. So if you saw Photoshop 7, you are a legend. Right? So then I used to, from time to time, try myself on it, see guys doing it. And then it was mainly, based on where I was, people were mainly using it to design covers for the CDs and cassettes. So there were still cassettes and CDs around. So then I was using a software called Macromedia Fireworks. Macromedia Fireworks. That Macromedia Fireworks was also another pack belonging to a company called Macromedia. Then later on, that company was acquired, I think, by Macromedia. I don't know much about that matter, but one thing is sure, at some point Macromedia stopped, and then the Macromedia software, such as the Fireworks, yes, I hope I'm saying the name right, got incorporated or integrated in the Adobe collection. So then Adobe included in its collection, and I believe today you can still have Fireworks. Let me search for it. I don't know if I installed it. I think I didn't. In my pack, I didn't install it because it was my first software, and they actually tend not to maintain it that much, to improve it that much, because after all, when you look at Adobe Fireworks, it was achieving the same thing as Photoshop does, and also Adobe Illustrator does, but it was very minimalistic and the features were really archaic to me anyway. So it isn't that professional like Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator are today. So that too has influenced these two software or has increased the rate of similarity in between Adobe software. So the other difference we could see and what I might think of is the interfaces. Obviously, the two software interfaces are not the same. So when you look at them, they are similar in some point, but they are not the same. So obviously, it is a difference to consider. So the other difference we can also look at is the tool set. So when you look at Adobe Photoshop's tool set, they are not exactly the same as Adobe Illustrator's tool set. And that will take us to the next problem, which is the use methodology. What I mean is that, by that is, although you have a pen tool, for example, in Adobe Illustrator, like this, but how you use it in Adobe Illustrator is not the same as how you use the same pen tool on Adobe Photoshop. So although you have the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator, it's not the same as how you use the same pen tool on Adobe Photoshop. There are some small differences on how these tools are used from one software to another software. So these are some differences as well. So the next difference, and which is the major difference, the most important difference, and I think that is what actually keeps these two software separate. So the problem is what we call a vector and then raster images. There is a difference between the types of images Adobe Photoshop processes and then the type of images Adobe Illustrator processes. And the types of images processed by Adobe Photoshop are called raster images. And the images processed by Adobe Illustrator are called vector images. And what is the difference? So to show you the difference, I want to explain a basic principle to you called pixels. So you might heard of the word pixels, especially while we were designing, you could have heard me saying I choose this dimension into pixels, so 1024 pixels as my image size. What is the pixel? So the pixel actually is a concept related to your screen or our screens. Our screens are actually a set of small squares. Throughout the whole screen is a set of squares. So each one of these squares has the capability of changing its colors from red, green, blue. So it has these three colors, and it can change these colors to represent, to actually kind of give you the feeling of having an image. So to illustrate that, I brought up this concept here. So the pixels are like this. They are small squares. So I didn't. So the pixels are something like this. They are small squares like this. So you can imagine a square like that. That's what a pixel is. So, but they are so tiny, so small that when you put them together, they become like one unified space. So that's why you look your screen as something really unified. But basically, inside your screen is a set of small squares that are aligned horizontally and vertically. By affecting a portion of these pixels, we can make a portion of these pixels look like an image. So that's how Photoshop works. So Photoshop works with pixels to make up images. So to illustrate that, let me show you what I mean actually. So I created these basic pixels. So I'll make them, these ones show up. So here I have 4 different pixels. Let's assume this is a pixel, this is a pixel, this is a pixel. So what I did was I decided to create an image on 4 different pixels. So I made something like this. If I put them together, put them together, what do we get? So if I show you this, when you look at this image, you see a star. So you look at the image, you see a star, but basically this star is a set of 4 pixels. So that's how Photoshop works. So to make up an image, Photoshop will take a certain number of pixels. So if we say, for example, the sizes of our image is 100 pixels by 100 pixels, so we are saying for the width of the image, align 100 different pixels. And then for the height of the image, align 100 different pixels and make up the image. So once we have the width and the height, it will create the whole surface of the image. So now, these 100 by 100 pixels, put on them the actual picture we want, the actual image we want. use portions of these pixels to combine, just like a combine, to come up with a full image. So that's how Photoshop actually makes up images. So the images of Photoshop you see are actually what we call the raster images. And if you remember very well, in a previous video when I was designing, I told you there was a concept I was trying to avoid, and this is one of the things. So let me show you an example. We'll try to open an image again to prove to you what that means. So open an image. So I will still take my boy Kofi's image. So I take this image, then I do something. Let me try using the brush tool on the image, right? And then I write something like this. You see, I could write on that image perfectly, right? Good. I could also go and take any selection tool like this. So let me take the round, yeah, and do like this, and then go to edit and cut. I can cut the image, so I can twist the image, I can retouch the image easily just because I opened it directly. So Adobe Photoshop knows this is already a JPEG image, it's already a final image, it's a raster image. Photoshop knows it. Now look at what happens when I do this. So I'll go back to the initial state, and then I'll right click on the layer of this image. So the image is the background actually. So I'll do, and then say convert to smart object. So once I convert this image into a smart object, it's no longer a rasterized image, it becomes a vector image. So we'll come back to this concept quickly right now. So what happens when I try to select a portion of the image and cut it just like I did? So I go to edit. You see, cut is no longer there. I could not cut the image. Also, if I try to take, let's say, the eraser or something else, not this, so let me remove the selection. I can't do anything on it. So also let me take, what else can I use? And let me select it. So right. So I now use the eraser on it, and Adobe Photoshop is telling me this smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. You get it? So they are actually asking me to convert the image into a raster image before Photoshop can work on it. So you see that? So Photoshop only, and not only, Photoshop works mainly on raster images. Although we could convert them into smart objects, kind of vector objects, but with the main format is the raster images that Photoshop uses. And it is important. It is very important because until the image is rasterized, you cannot apply some effect, you cannot do some operations on the image. So, for example, the other time you could see that some of the images when I was working, it was asking me to rasterize it before I can do it. So that is something you will face mainly. So every time you face such situation, just right click on the layer and then rasterize layer. So you will see rasterize, and now everything will come back to what it was. I could continue to do what I wanted to do. So that's one thing. Now, the other aspect of the images, which is the vector image, we said that Illustrator knows. So the vector images is a concept of drawing images using mathematical functions. What it means is, when I'm making a drawing like this on on Adobe Illustrator, Illustrator does not actually gather pixels and then come up with something. Illustrator uses mathematical functions in order to generate these paths. So the paths are actually kind of superficial. They do not depend on the number of pixels around. It's a mathematical equation that defines how this image will look. And the advantage is that there's no limit to how much you can zoom the image. You see, I could zoom any amount, the image is still looking sharp. Now look at what happens when I zoom a rasterized image like this. Have you noticed that? So the pixels being small squares, at some point they lose their quality. It's like you force a cloth to stretch, it will break. The cloth breaks. It's like you are having a hard copy, a hard paper that you force to stretch. So that breaks the pixels quality. So that's the difference, and that's why you will see companies prefer to go, or many people prefer to go to Adobe Illustrator in drawing their image, their logos, or they go to Adobe Illustrator to create quality illustrations that can be used in any format. You get that? So no matter how it is, no matter how the surface is going to look, no matter how huge the surface is going to be, the vector image is still going to appear sharp. So these are the little differences on Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. I believe while you are working on them, you yourself, you come up with some differences you could see. So one thing is sure, when some people get to master one of these softwares very well, they could achieve almost the same things you have on the other software, apart from this aspect of raster images and then vector image that you could not change. So in terms of achievement, from one software to other, people can achieve the same thing, and some prefer to even combine the two in order to achieve more. So thank you very much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.